So, Sorcha Carey, we're delighted to have you here this morning as part of our Modern Masters Women Events programme. Sorcha Carey is the director of the Edinburgh Art Festival, and Sorcha is going to do a fantastic presentation called Every Woman. So take it away, Sorcha.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Christina. And thanks so much for the invitation to contribute to the series. It feels a real honour. So today I'm going to focus on a public artwork by the artist Ciara Phillips, which formed part of our 2016 commissions programme. But before I do, I just wanted to give a very brief introduction about the festival. I hope that most of you are already very well familiar with Edinburgh Art Festival, but just in case, we are the platform for the visual arts as part of Edinburgh's August Festival season. We were founded in 2004, coming out of a very long-standing frustration in the city about the lack of profile for visual arts in the August festivals. And each year we work with galleries and museums such as the Scottish Gallery across the city to mount a programme of about 50 or so exhibitions. Alongside this presentation of work in galleries, each year we invite a very small number of artists to develop new work for the festival commissions programme, with a particular emphasis on projects that have been developed for public spaces beyond the gallery. Sadly, along with all the other August festivals this year, we had to take the decision to cancel the festival earlier this year, but we are presenting a small offering on our website of digital work and also some projects around the city. So this has included bringing back Peter Livisige's Flags for Edinburgh project, which you see in this slide. And that is a very simple and joyful invitation to buildings and communities around the city who have a flagpole to fly a flag saying hello. We're very proud to have worked with many of Scotland's leading contemporary artists as part of our commissioning programme, and that's included Susan Phillips, Christine Borland, Corinne Swan, Monster Chetwynd, Ruth Ewan, Rosalind Nashashibi, to name a few. But today I want to focus on a single work that we commissioned 5 years ago by the artist Ciara Phillips. So we were very pleased to work with Ciara to develop a commission to commemorate the centenary of the First World War as part of our 2016 commissions programme. Ciara is an artist based in Glasgow. She works principally in printmaking, and this has often involved extending her practice to cover multiple surfaces. So you see here an image of her exhibition for the Turner Prize in 2014, where she was exploring the life and work of Corita Kent, who was a very inspirational female educator based in California in the 60s. And you can see how Ciara has kind of really come out of the frame, and all the walls and tables and so on are covered in different elements of her printmaking practice. She often works collaboratively also with others to produce the prints. And I'm showing here an image of an exhibition that she made in Derry, which again, as you can see, is very much kind of incorporating all the spaces of the gallery walls. So our invitation to Ciara was to think about developing a work in response to the history of Dazzle. Dazzle was a technique that was developed in the First World War to try and make ships harder to detect. So they weren't trying to camouflage ships. They knew ships were far too large as objects to camouflage. But what they sought to do through these designs in really breaking up the large surfaces of ships and transforming them into kind of more confusing objects visually was to make them harder to detect through telescopes. So it made the direction and the speed of a ship much harder to read. And I'm showing here a black and white photograph of a Dazzle ship moored in Leith Harbour during the Second World War. But in fact, the designs used in Dazzle were often very, very colourful. So here are two paintings by the artist Charles Pears that are now in the Imperial War Museum. And as you can see, they drew on a whole array of colours in painting ships in these Dazzle designs. Our invitation to Ciara formed part of a series of contemporary responses by artists to the history of Dazzle, which were part of a 1418 Now series of commissions to commemorate the centenary of the First World War. And I'm showing you here Peter Blake's wonderful dazzling of a Mersey ferry, which is still in operation in Liverpool. And also Tobias Rehberger's contribution to the series, which is his dazzling of the HMS President, a ship that actually was built in 1918 and was moored in London. The histories of Dazzle often credit the painter and naval officer Norman Wilkinson with the invention of Dazzle as a technique. And indeed, such was the avant-garde nature of the designs, with their clear debt to modernism and movements such as Cubism, that Pablo Picasso famously said, "I invented that," when he saw his first picture of a Dazzle ship. But in researching the project, Ciara was immediately drawn to this image that I'm now showing you, of a group of women working in the dedicated department of Dazzle that was set up in the Royal Academy in London to generate new designs for ships. And you can see here that with the exception of one man in the right foreground of the image shows a room filled entirely with women artists who are all working on designs for Dazzle ships. It's perhaps less well known, the contribution that women made to the war effort in the First World War. I think we're increasingly familiar with the story of the Second World War. But in fact, women took on many, many new roles. And the Britain's first female war photographer, a woman called Olive Edis, documented many of these new roles that women were taking on. So I'm showing here a photograph that she took of women working in a telegraph office. So Ciara wanted to take this image as a starting point to really celebrate that role that women had played in the First World War. In the image that I showed you, you could see a small model of a Dazzle ship, and the designs for Dazzle ships were painted onto these little miniature models of ships that were made to show them the design in 3 dimensions. And the Imperial War Museum still has an extensive collection of these models. I'm showing you 2 of them. But of course, in the 21st century, Ciara was able to draw on the amazing digital skills of 3D modelers in developing her work. And she worked with a company based in Glasgow to build these 3D models in her proposal for the work. She devised a very bold gestural design, so full of colour, and also transposing her printmaking techniques, where she often literally just moves the paint around with her hands on the surface of a printing plate. So she brought all that approach that was kind of really at the core of her practice to taking on this very new and unusual commission for her, to bring that work into a large-scale 3-dimensional form. The design was developed for this ship. I'm showing you here an image of the Fingal, which was a former lighthouse tender. So lighthouse tenders were ships that brought essential goods and supplies out to Scotland's remote network of lighthouses all around the Scottish coast. And this ship, the Fingal, had been acquired by the Royal Yacht Britannia Trust, and we were very pleased to be able to partner with them on developing the commission. But unlike earlier responses, this kind of more bold gestural design really presented some challenges for us in terms of devising how we could translate that design onto the curved 3-dimensional surface of a 75-metre long ship. We quickly realised that we would need to build a team who were comfortable and confident with painting at scale. And so we approached Belinda Gilbert Scott, who is an artist based in Glasgow, and you can see her here at the centre of this image. And she also has very significant expertise in doing scene painting, so painting the backdrops for theatre stage sets. And she was able to work with us to translate Ciara's design into this much larger scale work on the ship. And even though it wasn't deliberate, it was a very nice coincidence and connection to the history of Dazzle ships that the team who painted the Fingal in 2016 were almost entirely female. You can see them all here. They use this amazing floating platform that is owned by the Royal Yacht Britannia and is used to kind of maintain the ship. Many of the ships in the First World War were also painted by female workers. So here I'm showing you an image of the Dazzle department in New York, and you can see all the women there painting a ship. So this is the final work that emerged from that amazing effort. The ship was actually painted in the water, which was quite a technical challenge. The other ships had been generally painted in dry docks. And you can see at the prow of the ship a series of dots and dashes in silver, which are a Morse code message that Ciara incorporated into the work in a homage to the original history of the Fingal, which was built as a lighthouse tender. So Ciara incorporated this message in Morse code. It's painted in a light reflective paint so that it shone at night with the light shining on it. And it reads, "Every woman a signal tower." So very much, very clear about her desire to share that really important message of the role of women also in contributing to that war effort. And the work was moored down at the docks in Leith for just under a year. Here's another image of it there. We had a small exhibition about the history of Dazzle that accompanied the exhibition. And though it had just one single outing where it was towed out into the Firth of Forth to take part in the centenary commemorations of the Battle of Jutland, which took place in June 1916. So you see it here under the Forth Rail Bridge. The Fingal, which hosted Ciara's Dazzle design, had been acquired by the Royal Yacht Britannia to turn into a boutique hotel. And in a nice coming full circle, they are now flying a hello flag, or I should say wearing a hello flag, because I'm advised by the experts that ships don't fly flags, they wear them. But they are taking part in Peter Livetage's Flags for Edinburgh project, to part of our small programme to mark the dates of what would have been our 2020 festival. So I'm going to finish there. Thank you for listening, and it's been wonderful to revisit this project after 5 years.
Thank you so much. I mean, I had no idea that there was 2,000 of these ships decorated, you know, during the First World War. And so I was really interested to discover what you were going to write about. And I remember the project, but I didn't know the history. So you bringing that back to life and highlighting all the women artists that were involved in that. I mean, it's so avant-garde. I mean, it seems so anti-war to have these kind of beautiful, arty ships going out to war.
I know they're extraordinary things because they're really quite joyful and playful objects, and you know, certainly I think a part of the history of the First World War that I had no idea of until we actually started working on this project. I think there's been several debates about how successful they were. The reason for dazzling them was in part because, of course, the ships which were bringing essential supplies across the Atlantic were really being targeted by U-boats. But certainly I think there was a real sense that they were really critical for morale as well, because there was a sense in which it was a way in which people could take control of something and feel that they were doing something to protect those ships as they made those perilous journeys across the Atlantic.
And so Ciara, was she introduced to this subject, or did she discover it herself? I mean, you know, I know that there was a huge amount of commissions around the centenary of the First World War.
She was, I think it's fair to say that I think she was peripherally aware of Dazzle. I think it's interesting, some artists have kind of looked at Dazzle over the years, but it was only in researching it that she uncovered this history of the role of women actually in Dazzle designs, and she was immediately very drawn to that. And it was certainly a very significant departure for her in her practice. I felt in inviting her that she, as an artist, she had all the qualities that were needed to sort of respond to such an invitation, that she was already very comfortable at working collaboratively. She also had already a practice in which she was thinking about ways in which she could move beyond the immediate kind of frame and confines of print and kind of bring that into a much larger and wider surface area. But nevertheless, it was the first time that she had kind of worked in thinking about how her practice might extend into a much more sculptural and obviously a very, much more significant scale of object. And that was a very, very interesting process for us. I think it was a very felt through process in terms of the way in which the team that were building the ship were really translating her very gestural forms onto this large scale of ship, and having to do that in a very instinctive way.
Well, thank you very much for bringing Ciara's project back to life this morning. We have had Sorcha Carey, Director of the Edinburgh Art Festival, with us this morning. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
Sorcha. Thank you.